Welcome and good afternoon. My name is Stephen Hicks. I will be one of your speakers today, as well as your chairman for the afternoon's festivities. Our theme today is innovation, substance, vision. And our question is, where shall we take the world of art? The world of high art exhibits a sense of having exhausted its major themes and a weariness with the current variations on those themes. Many who move in the circles of high art are aware of this sense of exhaustion, but few have a clear sense of where to go next. Many who move outside of the circles of high art are critical of current modern and postmodern trends, but they are pushing for a return to the past, for a return to tradition. Our purpose is to introduce and to stress a different theme and purpose to move the arts forward. We have today a sampling of those thinkers, artists, scientists, and philosophers working on reclaiming for the arts the cultural high ground it once had achieved, and to use that as a vantage for launching exploration of new territories. There are few more important cultural purposes. We all in this room know what art means to us individually. Art, books, and videos, right? Films at theater and on DVD. Stereos at home, music on our Walkmans, CD players in our cars, novels at the beach and as bedtime reading, trips to galleries and museums, art on the walls of our living space. We're each creating the artistic world that we want to live in. From the art in our individual lives to the art that is cultural and national symbols, from the $10 poster to the $10 million painting that is acquired by a museum, we all have a major investment in art. But we are none of us very satisfied with the world of high art currently, and today our purpose is to explore the possibilities. So, where shall we take the world of art next? I have the pleasure of introducing our first speaker today. Michael Newberry is an artist and founder of the Foundation of the Advancement of Art. He has painted full-time and lived off his work since his first exhibition in Holland in 1980. He's had several exhibitions in Europe and in the United States, and he's taught art at the Otis College of Art and Design in Los Angeles. He has written and lectured on aesthetic issues from critiquing concept of the sublime to offering radical alternatives to postmodernism. Please join me in welcoming Michael Newberry.
Good afternoon. Pushing the envelope has fascinated original artists since the dawn of humankind. Discoveries of proportion, perspective, anatomy, color theory, composition have inspired and excited them. They've also been excited by the content, creating godlike figures, people who are being enlightened by introspection or inviting landscapes. Today I would like to show you just a couple of innovations made by living artists today. And to give you a kind of guideline, I've kind of defined innovation as the bridge between an artist's knowledge of earlier discoveries and the further reaches of their imaginations. This is an old master still life by Zuburan, and it's a very simple, realistic, naturally realistic. Just one of the things to notice is that the upper half of the painting is a bit bland. We call it negative space, where it's the space between the objects, and the bar down below going across is kind of bland. And shooting into modern times with Mondrian, he sacrificed representationalism, or the subject matter, and focused on dividing up and composing the space of the surface of the canvas. And you can see that the way you divide this up is very interesting. There's a lot of energy, a lot of movement going on across the board from side to side, from top to bottom. And this is a contemporary painting by Tom Moore. And you can see that this is kind of a synergy of both these paintings. So he's seen the influence of abstract artists and how they divide up the canvas, and he's interested also in the realism. And there's things to look at here, as you can see that every object in there is really deliberately placed. The side walls are very specific in their shapes. The shape of the open window, the open space where the window's pushed open, is very, very deliberate. And there's a theme going on there of triangles and rectangles that are very, very deliberate and very well balanced. And so you're seeing that this is an influence what abstract art has done for a contemporary realist. Now, looking at color and light theory, I'm just touching upon these very, very briefly, very simply. It's not exhaustive by any means. This is a Vermeer painting. I'm sure it's probably in Delft. Here we kind of got a cold light and cold shadows. So in color theory, it's very nice as far as creating light, a very atmospheric light, but it's not very interesting as far as color goes. Then we come to a Monet, which obviously he's trying to create a lot more with light and color, and that's coming through here with the orange trees contrasted with the blue sky, and we've got a kind of a pinkish light going on in the distance. And that's quite an innovation as far as daylight goes, in contrast to the Vermeer painting. And then here we come to a Rothko, where what they're trying to do is, again, get rid of the realism and get rid of the subject matter such, and focus on just, in this case, with just color, what the color can do. And for many people who are sensitive, when they look at a Rothko, they'll actually feel emotions attributed by the color, or that by looking just at the color, they'll actually be able to sense certain feelings. And this is a contemporary Rutkowski, and he has synergized all of these paintings. The realism of the Vermeer, the color field of Rothko, the feeling of the Impressionist, to create a whole new way of looking at sky painting, landscape painting. And this is, I think, a magnificent innovation by a contemporary artist. This one's a little harder to talk about. Illustration of ideas. Some artists in the history of art are known more for what their subject matter is than for actually their ability to paint really well. I don't think Bosch is a great painter. I think he's a great illustrator of ideas. It's a little too complex to go into now because you deal with vibration of the paint and hierarchy of lights and darks and those kinds of things. And here you got a painting. It's a detail from a triptych, and this is the hell version. And it's chaotic and crazy and disjointed, and there's a lot of fascinating things going on that represent hell to him. And the triptych closes, and this is the front of the triptych. And I had to conclude this because you'll see what I'm following it up with. But this is his view of the world. And it's closed, which is interesting. His view of the universe is just closed in a bubble. Now, this is a Magritte, and I keep him in the same category as a Bosch, that this is a kind of illustration in the sense that I don't think painting-wise it's so interesting, like the color of the drapes or the color of the floor, the lighting going on doesn't seem to be particularly strong. I think it's very indifferent. But here it's obviously the idea, and I don't know if you all can see this, but it's an easel with a canvas on it that disappears, and so it's a painting that he did of the landscape, and he put it in such a way that it mirrors, or that you see straight through, it's transparent. So he's making a little game. It's a little intellectual game, like what's real, the painting or the real landscape, and then you can go ad nauseum going back and forth over that. And this is a painting by Brian Larsen, and I think it's the same tradition of Bosch and Magritte in the sense of it being illustrative, but the idea is what matters. And here he's kind of saying that he's interested in reality, so he's not interested in tweaking it in a surreal manner, but he's he cares about that. Here's a new version of a content of a woman who is obviously doing what she wants to do in life, be an astronaut. She's floating, so she's ascending in space, but it's a natural, it's not surrealistic or it's not mystical because she's an astronaut in space, so she would be floating. So he's tweaking, he's playing with the ideas of ascension, career, contemporary, and all these things to illustrate that. This is a Rembrandt painting, Blinding of Samson. Here we have a very radical composition with a lot of diagonals. It's a very violent composition with all these very strong diagonals. The very high contrast of light and dark is kind of violent. And then you have a subject matter, the Blinding of Samson, we're literally seeing it. He's combining the technical aspects of composition, lighting, and the subject matter all go together. One thing here, though, is that it is kind of black and white. There's very little in terms of, like, let's say, color theory. Here's a Van Gogh, one of my favorite Van Goghs. And what he's doing here is that he has this golden light. He's contrasting it with a lot more color than in the Rembrandt painting with the blues. Everything here is inviting. Even it's inviting to go and take a walk out into the blue skies. It's crisp, cool, blue, brilliant. And then it's like you've gone for a nice walk in France, and there is this brilliantly lit cafe with these golden colors, and you want to go in there and have something, a liqueur and a coffee, and it looks very, very inviting. And so what he's doing, he's using the color of the gold and the orange to be a symbol of inviting people to come in, and he set it up that way. This is one of my paintings. It's more realistic than the Van Gogh, and it's using more of the color theory of the Van Gogh than the color theory of the Rembrandts. We're looking to integrate color theory with realism. And then also this is two lovers after they made love. So the idea of radiance, the afterglow of making love. So I used the light to integrate with that. Now pop into sculpture. This is a Henry Moore. The top one's a Henry Moore. And here what he's doing, he's trying to focus our attention less on the realism and again more on the form. It's the same thing kind of like the compositions where they abstract it and they want us to look at the abstract composition. Here he's going towards an abstraction. The next one is a David Smith where he's going into complete abstraction and he's also using these abstract forms. Notice how these tubes, how the legs are on diagonals that make triangular shapes. There's triangular shapes going everywhere in these two paintings. And now we come to a contemporary. This is Praying Mantis by Martine, and she'll be speaking shortly. And you can see the influences that those other artists were trying to get really bold abstract shapes. But I even think that Martine's sculpture is much more bold in abstract shape than even theirs is. There's a lot more play, tweaking, moving. And at the same time, it's an amazing feat in realism and integrating that with the anatomy, with the expression, and pulling it all together. So that's an extremely innovative piece in the history of art. Coming back to the content again, and I love the idea of the concept of the sublime. Not Kant's, but kind of the dictionary definition. But here we have early Egyptian sculpture, and if you're talking about the subject matter of it, it's very formal, it's impersonal. I mean, even though she's holding him, her hands look so abstract that they don't feel like they're really touching him. This is a kind of sublimity of duty, of formality. This is life. Life is about being formal or duty or your obligation. It's very stiff. Famous Pieta by Michelangelo. In content-wise here, we have beauty, it's sorrowful, it's about death. So it's a sublime work of art, it's an amazing work of art, but it is dealing with death as the ultimate content. I mean, this is what it's about. And then this is a contemporary, Stuart Mark Feldman. It's 1992. This is also a sublime work of art. It's completely made. It has wonderful composition. It's a wonderful form. And it's about life. So we had the Egyptians that was about duty. Then we have Michelangelo, which was a piece about death. And I'm not saying that everything Michelangelo did is about that. I'm just using that for contrast. And then we have this piece by Stuart Mark Feldman that is, this is a new view of humanity. We don't see this in the past. This is a very radical new way of looking at humanity that's a contemporary masterpiece. So, just to sum up, innovation is the bridge between an artist's knowledge of earlier discoveries and the further reaches of their imaginations. Thank you very much.